Hello there, people of the internet. So I've been asked a couple of times what my most powerful rifle is. Well, I have a bunch of old school military surplus rifles that are, many of them over 100 years old. And lots of these rifles fire some pretty powerful, potent rounds of ammunition. Well, that being said, there's definitely much more modern designs that fire much more powerful rounds of ammunition than what I currently own. So whenever I'm asked what is my most powerful rifle, I typically tell them, hey, my most powerful rifle is a very common kind of rifle. This right here is a 1917 Enfield. This right here is one of the rifles that the United States military used until the full-on, full-scale adoption of the M1 Garand, which replaced a lot of their bolt-action rifles. These still saw service after that had happened, but that's a whole history lesson that I don't feel like going into. This right here was a United States military rifle. Obviously, it has been sporterized, but it is chambered in .30-06. And .30-06 is probably the most powerful cartridge that I have. Now, whenever I tell people this, they're like, oh, only a .30-06. And I'm like, what do you mean only a .30-06? And they're like, well, .30-06 is no 50 BMG. Speaking of, I am working on getting myself a 50 BMG for the channel. If you want to help out with that, links to Utreon and Patreon are in the description below. I have a lot of plans, and getting some support would definitely be helpful. But when people tell me just .30-06, when they ask how what my most powerful rifle is, I don't think that they quite realize just how powerful .30-06 can be. I have literally personally experienced .30-06 sending 225 grain projectiles at 3,500 feet per second. I literally saw that with my own eyes, and that is an insane bullet weight traveling at an insane velocity. For some context, 223 is regarded for its speed. It doesn't have a lot of the mass, so people give it regards to its speed. 223, a 55 grain projectile out of an appropriate length barrel, travels at around 3,200 feet per second. Well, this is a .30-06 225 grain projectile, not what I'll be shooting here, but this is what I've seen .30-06 do. A 225 grain projectile, which is roughly 5 times the amount, and it's a 30 caliber bullet as opposed to a 22 caliber bullet, so that's roughly 50%, 40%, 50%, somewhere in there, increase in diameter, and it is traveling several hundred feet faster than a 223. The .30-06 can be an absolutely screaming powerful cartridge if you have yourself a rifle that is strong enough to be able to handle those kinds of pressures. Now, normally whenever I fire .30-06, I fire just standard base ball ammunition. This stuff travels around, this particular steel case stuff, I'd say around 2,900 feet per second or so. This is a 150 grain projectile, firing it out of a bolt action, it's steel case. Not necessarily something that you would want to fire out of a semi-automatic, but I mean, you can. I've done it, but like I said, not necessarily something you want to do. But out of a bolt action, that's just fine. This is still 150 grains traveling at about 2,900 feet per second, which is an absolutely insanely, that's a lot of power, dude. That's a 30 caliber round and a lot of mass behind that bullet traveling at some pretty insane speeds. Now, whenever I am asked why don't I get anything more powerful, well, first off, the one thing I'm looking at is 50 BMG, but there's a lot of things in between .30-06 and 50 BMG, and I'm asked, all the time, hey, why don't you get yourself something more powerful? And the main reason why I don't do that is because of barrel life. Firearms like, the .30-06 right here, or say 8mm Mauser, or 7.62 by 54 rimmed, things like this right here have a barrel life. I mean, you can fire several thousand rounds through these rifles, and they will still be accurate just because of if these rifles were chambered in something that was a little bit more spicy and something that would wear out the barrel a lot faster, then I'd have to replace the barrel in some of these rifles. Now, another reason why I don't get myself anything more powerful is here in the state of Florida, practically speaking, if I'm going to use these rifles, it's probably going to be for hunting. and the deer around here only get to be about 150 pounds. Now the boar around here will get around 300 or so pounds. But a 30-06 out of a rifle like this right here is still like way adequate enough for taking out a 300-pound boar. Like, whenever I talk about 30-06, I think that a lot of people completely underestimate it. Like, people who are used to thinking about like 50 BMG and whatnot. Because whenever I tell a lot of people who aren't necessarily gun savvy, hey, my most powerful round is a 30-06, they kind of like blow it off like, yeah, that's just 30-06. 30-06 is a cartridge that can dispatch a bear from 5 football fields away. It is a seriously powerful, potent round. 150 grain projectile traveling at, let's say, 2,900 feet per second, unless we're talking about like military loadings, I think it's more like 2,700 feet per second. That is still an insanely fast speed. That is a lot of power going downrange. Now, just because I have 30-06 here, I also have other rifles that are damn near equivalent in power. This right here is 7.62 x 54 rimmed, and fired out of an appropriate length barrel, this right here actually has roughly the same power as the 30-06. So I'm going to go ahead and send a round at this downrange. Originally I wasn't going to shoot this in this video, but I just so happen to have it laying here with some ammunition by it, so I may as well. This right here, the 7.62 x 54 rimmed, ballistically speaking, has roughly the same power as the 30-06. Well, hell, the 8mm Mauser right here, chronographed Turkish ammunition, is a 155 grain projectile traveling at about 3,000 feet per second. That is some insane speed and some insane power. I don't have any of that out here, otherwise I'd fire this rifle, but you guys have seen me fire this rifle plenty. Just the rifles that I have a pretty insane level of power, and here in the state of Florida, the power behind these rifles is absolutely more than adequate enough to be able to handle basically anything that I would want to handle. Now, that being said, I'm still going to get myself something extremely powerful like a 50 BMG just specifically for the YouTube channel. But 50 BMG is kind of its own beast. It's like the most powerful civilian rifle that you can get. So yeah, for the YouTube channel, I'm willing to go ahead and get that. And at like 3 shots a bullet, I'm going to be spending a lot of money to burn out that barrel. 50 BMG isn't exactly a barrel burner either, especially considering how much power you're getting compared to how much it's actually wearing out the barrel. And seeing as I'll probably just be shooting garbage at 40 yards, a burned out barrel won't matter much. Whereas if I were to get something like, oh, I don't know, a 338 Lapua or something like that, something that'll burn out a barrel in like less than 1,000 rounds, if I were to shoot that as regularly as I shoot some of these old Milsurp rifles, man, I'd have to replace that barrel, you know, several times. In terms of the amount of ammo. If I were to shoot the same amount of ammo from something like that as opposed to something like this, like I literally have, hell, 1,500, perhaps even 2,000 rounds through this particular rifle, this 30-06. Whereas a 338, if I were to stick 2,000 rounds through that without replacing the barrel, I'd have a freaking 10 MOA group at 50 yards. Not only that, but a lot of these old Milsurps, especially if we're talking United States Milsurps, the ammunition is easy to find, and a lot of times it will be not as expensive as some other stuff. Like, for example, we're not talking surplus ammo here, because that varies on the market greatly. If I were to go out and get new production 30-06, because of how prolific that is here in the United States, it would cost me around 65 to 75 cents a round, depending on what it is that I'm getting and if I'm buying in bulk, etc., etc. Whereas if I were to go out and get new production 8mm Mauser, we're talking more like $1.20 to $1.50 a round, depending on what I'm getting. There's a lot of caveats there. But I can shoot these rifles for a lot less money than I could shoot some of the more powerful rounds, like 338 Lapua Magnum is roughly $3 a round. 50 BMG for just like the bare minimum basic stuff, like surplus stuff, if you could find it on the market, which isn't something that always happens. That's also going to be about $3 a round. If you want to get yourself new production, it's going to be more like $5 a round. 50 BMG is a seriously powerful cartridge. I think it's like 660 grains of projectile moving downrange very, very rapidly. That's a serious round. I'd like to get one for the channel, but I just don't have one yet. My most powerful round is a 30-06, and I haven't really looked into anything more powerful. Whenever I look into getting rifles, I look at getting rifles of historical significance, not rifles based off of their extreme power, mostly because the historically significant rifles that I get are powerful enough to be able to handle literally whatever it is that I'm wanting to handle here in the state of Florida. Now, if I'm looking to go on an African safari or something like that, 30-06 might be a little underpowered for going up against a herd of rhinoceros or something like that. Rhinoceros, rhinoceroses. I have no idea what the plural for rhinoceros is. So just a herd of rhinoceros coming at me. 30-06 probably would be a little underpowered for something like that, but that's a completely one-off situation. I don't plan on going to Africa. If I do, I'll bring a 50 BMG. Nothing's getting past that. But here in the state of Florida, I just don't really have a need for anything more powerful than 30-06. And 30-06, man, that could literally take care of anything. Now here in the fields of Florida, if I were to shoot at something, like the farthest shot is probably going to be about 5, maybe 600 yards away. But for the most part, if I'm shooting at something, I'm going to be in the bushes, and my furthest shot is going to be about 50 yards away. You know, the 500-600 yard shot across an open field, that is, hell, I don't think that's happened once, but it could happen, I guess. However, it is way more common for me to, say, be out hunting or something, and I'll shoot at something from 50 to 100 yards away, and 30-06 is kind of overkill at distances like that. If I'm doing something like that, I'll probably break out something more like a 243 or a 270 or something that would give me less of a pile of hamburger to bring home and enjoy. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. What is you guys' most powerful rifle? I guess my most powerful cartridge I have is probably a 300 Winchester Magnum. I have the 7mm Remington Magnum, or rather I had, thanks to a buddy of mine. He let me borrow his. But my most powerful round I have is a 300 Win Mag, and that is a very powerful cartridge. I just don't have a rifle chambered in it, but I have the cartridges. I just haven't really looked into getting a rifle chambered in that, because why? 30-06 is plenty for doing what I am looking to do. Not only that, but 300 Win Mag, that's a barrel burner as well, and you're going to burn out your barrel pretty damn quick. Not only that, but ammunition is expensive compared to some of the other cartridges I could have out there. Anyway, like I was saying, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are in the comments below. Let me know what you guys' most powerful rifles are and what you use them for. That's kind of the caveat there. I don't really know what else to say for this video, so I'm going to say thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen.
Shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.